nice tradition of the committee. Please feel free to introduce any member of your family. Or
I won't introduce them all by name, but my family is here in support.
Please stand up. Thank you. Welcome to you. Mary. We think public service is a family thing, and family matters. So, yeah, our spouses, our kids, all of that. So, thank you. A brief opening statement, Mr. Hoppen, and then we have some questions for you.
Senator, I will be very brief. It seems like just yesterday that I was here before the Rules Committee to be confirmed the first time. I've been chair of the board for about a year and a half now. I certainly enjoy the responsibility that goes along with that and the challenges. And after Chairman Eisenberg so deftly passed the ball of responsibility to my hands, I assume that all of you will have plenty of questions of me, and I won't take any more of your time telling me about my desires to be here or anything else, because I definitely would like to be here and like to continue being here. But I know you have a lot of questions, and hopefully I'm prepared for them.
Thank you. Let us hear your perspective on the progress of the implementation of the water package we passed last year. We know that the Water Board has important duties in preventing water theft, and maybe most significantly looking at the public trust aspect of water in the Delta and other assignments. So from your perspective, I know there's been quite a bit of press actually about some preliminary decisions that the State Water Board has made in this regard, but why don't you tell us how you assess the progress?
Well, I think you're referring to the Delta Outflow Report, and
yes.
That was an interesting challenge for the board. Certainly, we were asked one facet of a question as it dealt with the public trust in the Delta. It seemed important to us that we had the answer for you and the report done within the 9-month time period. We had it done a week or 10 days early. That schedule was important because we knew Mr. Eisenberg was waiting for that report. Any frustration we had was the fact that we really didn't have the time to completely develop the issue as it pertained to public trust. It was a very narrow window that we looked at, and I feel my staff did an excellent job. They did exactly what we asked them to do. With the legislation last fall, we were given the authority to hire a Delta Water Master, which we have done. I'm very pleased with the candidate that we selected, and we were given 25 PYs for enforcement issues. We haven't been able to hire all of them, but we are certainly in the process of filling those 25 slots. So I think we've made good progress. We have appreciated the effort that went into all of your activities last fall in bringing people together in what unfortunately is kind of an unusual way.
Unusual is one way to describe it. Yes, it was, but it was worth it.
It was encouraging to me.
Yeah, it's it's what we should be doing more of, in my opinion. Let me. I'm going to go a little out of order here, without objection, because we have a colleague, Senator Alex Padilla, who would like to weigh in on a particular concern. This is not under the guise of support or opposition testimony in any way, but he needs to get back to the floor as the Senate session has resumed. So as a courtesy, I want to ask Senator Padilla to come on up and express a concern that then we can then follow up and ask you.
That'd be fine.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. President, Pro Tem, members of the committee, for indulging me with a couple of minutes. You're absolutely right. This isn't necessarily a for Charlie Hoppen comment or an against Mr. Hoppen comment. Actually, as a former member of the Rules Committee, had a chance to vote for confirmation the last go-around. So I know he's got healthy working relationships with legislators and others in state government. But on behalf of not just my district, but most of the Los Angeles delegation, there is a key item before the board that Mr. Hoppen and his colleagues will be entertaining that I think warrant consideration and conversation here as part of this confirmation hearing, and that is the Water Board's proposed policies on once-through cooling. I know once-through cooling as an issue has come forward recently, not just at the board, but in the legislature, out of concerns for environmental impact of power plants and others that have once-through cooling technology and its impact on the environment and marine life. Very important. I don't disagree with that. I do believe, however, that it needs to be balanced also with concerns about the reliability, stability, and cost impacts of our electricity infrastructure throughout the state. In the Los Angeles area, the Department of Water and Power specifically is grappling with the timeframes called for in the recent policies that the Water Board released, and not only looking at the implementation challenges of the time frame called for by the policy, but the cost impact to ratepayers in Los Angeles. It's a municipal-owned utility. It's all ratepayer/public taxpayer money. And what we also fear is sort of a perfect storm of the fiscal and other impacts of a once-through cooling policy, in addition to probable increased costs due to a renewable portfolio standard. That's something else pending before this legislature. In addition to, not if, but very likely, some sort of cap-and-trade program from the ARB, a state program, if not an actual federal program sooner rather than later. This can easily converge to have a nightmare effect for the utility in terms of managing compliance, and even more so, fiscal impact on the residents of the city and others in like situations. So it's not just a once-through cooling water policy in isolation, but it's part of a greater context that I know the board is taking seriously, but I hope this body will entertain as well in confirmation consideration of Mr. Hoppen.
And I know, I'm sorry, Senator Cedillo.
Right. This has been much written about. You might want to lay out some of the most recent increases that challenge with.
Oh, just to comply with current law, not even proposed or pending legislation, you're looking at 30% rate increases in a matter of a year or two, potentially for ratepayers in the city of Los Angeles. So certainly significant is not a strong enough term.
And Senator Padilla, I know you and I talked a little bit. We would want to ask Mr. Hoppen here, as we move forward with the confirmation process over the next several days, if you can sit down with representatives of LADWP and the good senators affected, however, you put that together, to sit and really talk about this issue, because I'm hearing it loud and clear from my members, and it needs some resolution here.
And to be clear, it's not an opposition to the policy itself. It's just sort of the rules for compliance and the time frame, even more so for compliance, that we're seeking.
Would you like me to answer Senator Padilla's concerns
Yeah,
at this time?
why don't we get you on the record on this subject, and then again, we would ask that you meet with the LADWP representatives, take Senator Padilla's lead here, Senator Cedillo's lead, in putting that together. And
certainly, with respect, the two senators are always welcome in any conversations we have. This morning at 11 o'clock, I met with the Cabinet Secretary, Mr. Austin Buettner, and his representatives of choice with my Chief Deputy Engineer on this very issue. Certainly, the cost of compliance with the once-through cooling policy is going to be expensive, just like any environmental improvement. It's clear that the policy we put forward has environmental benefits. It is also very clear that it is going to be expensive. And I need to be horribly candid in a portion of my answer to put things in perspective. When we were developing the once-through cooling policy, the management that they had at LA Water and Power had a different style of doing business than I have. I've had a good rapport with Mr. Buettner since he came online, and what we decided this morning was that, and you've asked a question and I need to answer it, and unfortunately it's going to be a bit public on something that we were... I think it's important to let you...
All we're asking today is that you meet with them and try to resolve the difference?
We met today. We are going to meet with them next Tuesday at 10:30 in the morning, and the discussion will be how we can extend their compliance schedule with interim measures during the additional time that they need. There will be some capital cost in what we are proposing. Initially, the idea was the request was to just have their compliance schedule extended for a very long period of time. We're certainly willing to entertain that, and I say that speaking as one board member and one vote. But the idea that was floated today that they accepted was that there would be interim measures taking between the current time and the time that they were able to retrofit their plant. So, and we realized the uniqueness of the situation down there with the public-owned utility and the fact that 40% of their power comes from these plants, the other 60%, much of which comes from probably the dirtiest form of power we have in the United States. So we are sympathetic, and I think we have a very good rapport with Mr. Buettner. Certainly he has my cell phone number and my home phone number that he doesn't hesitate to use. So I think we have an open process going there.
It sounds like progress. Let's just see if we can bring it to as much of a closure as possible over the next week.
The senator should feel free to talk to Mr. Buettner and make sure that he corroborates what I'm telling you, but I feel that we're moving forward in a positive way.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay, so that answers, we've talked about delta protection, we've talked about once through cooling. I want to talk about your view of the state board's relationship with the 9 regional boards. There was recently a unfortunate and highly publicized incident where the chair of the Central Valley Regional Board was reported in the Sacramento Bee to have concealed her marriage to a man whose organization conducts much business before the board. This resulted in a fine by the Fair Political Practices Commission. I'd like to know not just what you think of that, because I assume I know what you think of that, but whether or not there is sufficient coordination, direction, leadership, what the responsibility of the state board is to ensure or help to ensure that these sort of things don't happen at the regional level, and what role you play.
Unfortunately, I play a very small role, and as chair, I probably play the only role of any of the 5 board members in that on a fairly regular basis, the appointments office will call and ask if I have an issue with anyone, if I have any names to put forward for vacancies on the regional board. But to say that we participate in the final process is not correct. And that doesn't happen with every appointment. I would say probably in 50% of the cases I get a call just asking if I've had any problems with them, if I have heard anything negative, if I'm aware of anything. I was not aware of the situation with the person that you were talking about as far as the marriage and at all. But certainly it has an appearance of an impropriety. I hope that was an adequate answer. It's a difficult question to answer because the appointments to the regional boards are really the responsibility of the governor. And like I said, I'm the only one of the 5 of us that really even gets a cut at it.
I understand, but I guess it begs the broader question, which we often ask of people in your position. You're at once called upon to be a regulator, and you're well known as a leader, policy leader in the water arena. I just described what I think your role is. How do you see your role? In other words, in this particular instance, for example, should you have made a public statement about that sort of impropriety? Should you be reviewing the business or the conduct of the regional boards, or do you have an oversight responsibility?
I would like to have the oversight responsibility, but the way it is now, I mean, I could make a public comment certainly, but I really don't have any authority to reach in and have someone removed, someone appointed as the chair of the board. Like I said, the only time I really get a cut at it is when the appointments office is considering a candidate, and that's not on a regular basis. We don't have a regular conversation on appointees. Sometimes appointees are removed that I know nothing about. Sometimes there are issues that are raised, and I'm asked my opinion, and if I've had any problems on the particular candidate that you're talking about, I was not asked a question. She had been appointed, and it was my understanding she was reappointed.
I just might suggest that given the importance of the board, given the fact that you're visible, and given the fact that, frankly, you're well respected by folks, that it might be appropriate for you to be public or to make a public comment about something that affects potentially the integrity of all the regional water boards and the state board, because perception is reality, and we all get tarred sometimes by the bad behavior, inappropriate behavior of others in our field, and I'd certainly like to see, in general, folks in your position not be afraid to speak up and speak out when it affects the subject matter that you're working in.
I appreciate your point of view, and it's also, I hope you appreciate the fact that it's a fine line to walk in light of the fact that the people we're talking about have been appointed by a governor, and to have one of his other appointees say, I really don't like this person, or this isn't good. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done, but it's not something that I can do with my normal lack of tact. I would have to be much more tactful than
Mr. Chair.
I assumed tact in my suggestion.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
But what it brings to mind is a greater question, one that I've, in 12 years, never been able to really decipher, and that is, what is the role of the state water board in regulating or overseeing the 9 regional boards? Is it a pretty much hands-off role? Are there certain distinct duties, or is it all indistinct?
Well, we provide them with their legal counsel and with their budgets, and I've used the analogy before. Oftentimes it's like having a whole bunch of 18-year-old kids that still live at home that depend on you for their budget, and they aren't going to tell you what time they're going to come home at night or what kind of clothes they're going to wear. And, unfortunately, when we deal, the mechanism that we have, generally speaking, is if the regional board makes a very egregious decision, it can be petitioned back to our board, and we can act in a quasi-adjudicatory fashion to resolve it. We have used, the legislature gave us a 5-year review process on the underground tank system, and we have been using that in a very expeditious way the last year, at my direction, quite frankly, to close some of the underground tank cleanup sites that the regional boards appeared to have fallen in love with, that were costing the taxpayers of California a tremendous amount of money without providing what we felt was any environmental benefit. And so we have reached in and have closed large numbers of these sites and are continuing to do that, trying to send a message to the regional board, if you will, if you don't do your job, we're going to use whatever tool we have to do it ourselves.
Do you think the legislature should give you more specific authority in the future to be able to use your oversight?
I would certainly appreciate it. Some of the regional board executive officers may tell you they don't think it's a good idea, but wouldn't bother me a bit, sir.
Well, let me follow up on that. Do you believe you have the authority to require the regional boards to make their budgets, their specific budgets, public for each region?
Would you repeat that, please?
Do you believe you have the authority as chair of the State Water Board to require regions to make public their budgets?
I don't know about the public portion of it. Certainly we have a great deal of oversight on their budgets, but whether we can require them to make that budget public or not, I can't honestly answer that question, sir.
I'd like you to, if you would, consult with counsel and find out if you do have the authority. And then I guess suppose the question would be, if you do have the authority, the legal authority, would you be willing to use that authority and make that demand of the regional boards?
I would. When I first came to the board, Senator, I think it's appropriate to say that I thought we ought to do away with the regional boards, and it didn't take me very long to realize the regional function that they do provide, the sensitivity to regional issues. I think that part of it is critical. I don't think we should do away with the regional boards, but to have more oversight over them, I think would, is a frustration not just from one party or the other, but one that I hear from everyone.
Okay, very good. Are there witnesses in support of the nominee?
I hope so.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see anybody else. I'm sorry. If you have got questions, of course.
Yes.
Senator Cedillo.
Yes, I know. Methyl iodine. Tell me about it, your jurisdiction over it, what you feel about it. Lots of people think it's really bad if it gets in our water supply. Some agencies are beginning to see it as a source of cancer. So tell me where you guys are at on this.
What we have done, Senator Cedillo, is there were concerns raised by quite a few folks that came to see me about the potential of groundwater contamination from methyl iodide. We looked at the protocols that the state of Florida put in place as far as groundwater monitoring. I will have to say that I don't think it's my place as the chair of a board. I don't think it's the place of the State Water Board to tell either the Air Resources Board or DPR what they should do or what they should not do. But what we did do on a letter with my participation and the signature of our executive director is that we asked in very strong words that the Department of Pesticide Registration not only monitor groundwater in sites where methyl iodide would be proposed to be applied, but if the product was registered, to do soil column monitoring as well, because the concern, and I think a legitimate concern, was if the concerns over methyl iodide reaching the groundwater were valid, we needed to know if it was progressing through the soil column before we wound up with iodide in groundwater and then had a very difficult time in remediating it. So, we've been very firm about that. If the product is registered and we don't feel that those protocols are adequate, we will take additional steps. But we have not sent a letter to DPR telling them that we oppose or support the registration of this project or product just because we don't feel that it's our responsibility.
Right. But it wouldn't necessarily be inappropriate to give them notice about your concerns.
Well, I think we gave them notice about our concern when we requested the soil column and groundwater monitoring protocols, and we're going to watch that if the product is in fact registered, we will watch it very, very closely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cedillo. All right, now let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee. Briefly, if we might.
Randy Canals, East Bay Mud. East Bay Mud supports Charlie Hoppin's confirmation. I can tell you that when Mr. Hoppin came before you the first time for confirmation, East Bay Mud had no position on his confirmation. We simply didn't know Mr. Hoppin well enough to have an opinion one way or another. We've observed his leadership and his actions and are absolutely convinced that Mr. Hoppin is the man of the hour for the challenges that the Water Board must confront with regard to the Delta and many, many other water rights issues in the coming years. I can tell you, I was an employee of the Water Board from 79 through 89. I represented the Water Board here in the legislature. I served for 5 different chairs during the Jerry Brown administration and the entirety of the Deukmejian administration. Mr. Hoppin measures with the very finest of the chairs that I worked for in my time at the Water Board. It's very important that the leader of the Water Board enjoy the respect of the environmental community, the water community, all of the various interests, the discharger community. That's an important factor. I've seen over the years that there have been times when the leadership of the Water Board did not enjoy that kind of respect. That's not a good thing for the state of California. It's my experience and my observation that Mr. Hoppen does enjoy the respect and the confidence and the trust of the major interests across the state.
Thank you very much. That's quite a recommendation. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Jack Walco on behalf of the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. Professor Canal said it all very well. And just like to simply add that we've, SEEB's dealt with the chairman, both his regulatory and policy functions, and have experienced exactly what Randall Canals indicated just a few moments ago. And we're particularly pleased that the colloquy between Senator Padilla and the chairman will result in additional discussions on the OTC matter. So that's well taken as well. So
good.
We encourage your aye vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Tim Schmelzer representing Wine Institute, also in support of Chairman Hoppen's confirmation today. We've appreciated the balanced approach that Chairman Hoppen has brought to the issue. He's had the distinction of being chair during a period where two critical issues of importance to those in the wine industry have come up, both establishing in-stream flow criteria for the North Coast region, which we miraculously, in my opinion, actually wrapped up this year with both parties in the industry and the environmental community coming together. It's a very impressive feat, and we appreciate the collaborative effort that's been going forward in dealing with frost protection issues. Thank you, and we encourage your vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kathy Cole with the Metropolitan Water District. We, too, support Mr. Hoppen's confirmation to the State Board. I think more now than ever before, it's critical that the continuity on the board remain in place. They have a big job to do, lots of decisions to make in the future, and we urge your aye vote.
Thank you very much. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Ron Davis with the Association of California Water Agencies, and I can share with you that it has been our member agencies and Aqua staff's experience that Mr. Hoppen has an open door, an open mind. He has, as mentioned earlier, he's done an excellent job bringing in all the stakeholders, very respectful of everybody's opinion. We all get an opportunity to be heard, and I think that's what we all are looking for, is an opportunity for fair hearing. And so Aqua encourages your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Albiani on behalf of California Grain and Feed, California Seed, California Warehouse Association, and several other ag entities. In my entire lobbying career, I don't think I've ever said this, but I full-heartedly, 100% support and agree with everything Randy Canals said.
Hey.
So we support and we appreciate, and we'd love to see Charlie be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Mr. Chair and members, Dave Puglia, Western Growers Association. I want to echo the comments that were made, particularly the fact that we've observed that Mr. Hoppen has been impartial in his proceedings. He's driven by the facts, by the law. In spite of the fact that he's a Western Growers member, he still is impartial and driven by the facts and by the law. Happy to support his confirmation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Stan Van Vleck, representing Northern California Water Association. We, too, support Mr. Hoppen's nomination.
Thank you very much. Guzman.
Good afternoon. Martha Guzman with the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. And mostly I did want to give Charlie some accolades and really express some concerns that we do still have with his audaciousness, perhaps at times. But he has been a tremendous leader for small disadvantaged communities and really perpetuating just through the entire staff there on what it means to be able to finance something so simple as a septic upgrade, not to mention a wastewater project. So we do very much thank him for his steadfast commitment to dedicating resources to disadvantaged communities when it comes to wastewater in particular. I think the greater challenge as we continue to work with Charlie in the future is to really see the role that the Water Board has in preventing further groundwater contamination in rural communities. And obviously, methyl iodide is one of those key concerns that the Department does not have, the Department of Pesticide Regulation does not have a role in dealing with the problems of DBCP, TCP, and all of the other fumigants that are now in our groundwater that poor communities are left to deal with. So that's where we want the leadership from Charlie to come from further in preventing that. And obviously, maybe there's some statutory help that we can provide him to help prevent that in the future. Secondly is the issue that he spoke so eloquently of in a recent op-ed related to nitrate contamination in rural communities. And that is going to be a huge issue with the Irrigated Lands Program as it continues to develop in two critical sub-regions of the state. And that is, you know, Charlie was down in the Central Coast not too long ago speaking at one of these workshops and giving his perspective on one of the drafts that we think was a very strong draft, but he had a different opinion of that draft. So I know that Charlie has an open door, and I have greatly appreciated that he has an open door, and I hope to continue to work with all of you in making sure that that Charlie is given the proper tools that he needs, if necessary, for some of this groundwater protection. But we do look forward to working with him in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Senator, it's a blessing to have the support of your critics.
Yeah, that it's really true. That's really, I mean, that testimony is striking to me as well, and makes me glad that we're hearing you now, and that you know, I think I further appreciate the outstanding job that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
I am prepared to support your nomination to move it out of committee. Not going to take it up on the floor until sometime next week. And again, I hope that those talks continue to be productive.
They will.
Thank you. Moved by Senator Onnested. Please call the roll.
Senator Cedillo? Aye. Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Oropesa? Onnested? Aye. Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
4-0. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Oppen. Appreciate it. Very good. We've got a few more items, then we need to get upstairs, Senators, so that we can join our colleagues. Okay. Now, as I understand it, either Senators Dutton or Onnested, I'm not sure, want to take up 9, 12, 14, and 15 separately. Okay, so let's take. I'm sorry.
Number 4, can we include the science fellows with the regular fellows?
Yes, we will amend number 4 to include the science fellows. So then let's take up 2 through 16 with the exception of 9, 12, 14, and 15. Moved by Senator Onnested. Please call the roll.
Senators Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Aye. Dutton, aye. Oropesa? Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
4-0. Now, do you want to take each of these items up separate or as a group? Okay, are you guys both voting no?
Oh, I'm just voting no. I just haven't had a chance.
You're voting yes, so we get them out. Okay. 9, 12, 14, and 15. Again, moved by Senator Onnested. Please call the roll.
Senators Cedillo? Cedillo, aye. Dutton? Oropesa? Onnested? Onnested, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg,
We're out 3-0. Thank you very much. Nothing further to come before the committee. We will stand in adjournment. Thank you.